Let's go back to the early days of Arknights. It's February 2021, CN server. The new Sui sibling event dropped as the festival event for Chinese New Year, Who is Real? And we are introduced to the free unit, Lava the Purgatory. This was the first altar unit introduced into the community, and it also set the tone. This was not just a reskinned Lava. This was an older Lava who had grown and changed, who was stronger and had developed her skills. And then a few months later, on May 2021, again for CN server, we were introduced to our second alternate operator, Skadi the Corrupting Heart, an alternate universe version of Skadi if she were to succumb to the Seaborn's manipulation and gave over her mind to Isharmla. So you can imagine, when an alternate operator for Chen was announced in the August 2021 Carnival event, there was an air of, what kind of alter will this be? Are we going the character development route? Are we going the alternate universe route? Mayhaps it will be an alternate universe of what if Chen decided not to join the LGD and decides to be a lifeguard and she got a water gun. That's it. She got a water gun. I mean, it was a strong AF water gun. Chowder did become a go-to solution to delete enemies from the map. I remember borrowing her from my partner to fight the end speaker in Sotofera Navis when I was new to the game. Imagine starting Arknights and your first event is... Baby Arknights player Rosa would have probably quit after the Seaborn trauma without help. Shout out to Kyostin V. But I digress. For a while, this was the joke. We got our next alters. Neural the Radiant Knight, Cruz the Keen Glint, Spectre the Unchained, alters whose identities came from character or story developments, and Chen got an alter because they gave her a water gun and a bikini. In fact, when I started scripting my first lore and ludonarrative analysis, my partner would joke to me, I can't wait to see how hard you cope this analysis for Chowder. And to be honest, I was scared too. I even added that joke to said video. Arknights has a lore that spans several years in-game, and it's impossible for one character to remain the same. At some point, they grow and change, like all people do. And this is reflected in their alters. Some of these are not as deep as the others, but the majority of them follow this trend. But then, about a month after I made that video, Hoshiguma the Breacher was announced in the Carnival event in the CN server. And I had to stop and think, because wasn't Swire the Elegant Wit also introduced in a Carnival event, specifically So Long Adele? Why is it that the Lungmen trio received their alters specifically in the Carnival events, aka the Summer Celebration event? You know, the Vacation Saga, the Beach episode? It's literally in the description. Summertime beats. When the sky is clear and the sun is shining, it's time to leave the heavy stuff behind and enjoy some well-earned fun. But for Rhodes Island's operators, vacations never seem to go smoothly. From wacky hijinks to unexpected disasters, mayhem always finds a way. I did a poll as a joke on the possible lore implications of this, and the answers were just as I expected. But then I got all serious. What is the possible connection between the three Lungmen operators receiving their alters during their vacations? Basically, this whole video is me taking this joke way too seriously and making it your problem. Ha ha ha. Hello everyone, Rosabel's here, and in this video, we're going to take a look at the possible reasons why the Lungmen trio received their alters the way they did, the possible symbolism or growth that they undergo, and perhaps gain a better understanding on who the Lungmen trio are in their jobs vis-a-vis their carnival counterparts. For those who follow me, this is a mini analysis, so I won't be deep diving into every detail of their stories and kits like I usually do. I'm just going to discuss an overview of the characters in line to my main ideas, and this will serve as a sort of introduction. Mayhaps I'll deep dive into each of the characters and their alters, the detailed lore behind everything, and its relationship to their kits later on if you guys want. Just in case this needs to be said, spoiler warnings for the whole Lungmen arc of the main story, so I guess until chapter 8, plus Dossoles Holiday, So Long Adele, Home Away From Home, and Ato. I'll also be pulling up operator records, files, and modules as appropriate.
I've always had my suspicions about Rhodes Island. Still do.
When we first met Chen a long time ago, like Chernobog era long ago, she was the Superintendent of Police of Lungmen Guard Department or LGD, head of the Special Inspection Unit. We got a pretty clear cut on her personality. Generally very tsundere, she's strict and harsh, but she has an underlying kindness and softness to her. Chen herself having oripathy was a huge reveal in Arknights, especially after spending multiple chapters explaining to the Doctor the socio-economic political effects of being oripathic, especially in a place like Lungmen that had extreme levels of prejudice against the infected, to the point that they were funneled into slums where they weren't even treated as citizens of Lungmen. Chen was spared this fate because of nepotism. Really, her uncle is Wei Yen Wu, who is the chief executive of Lungmen and was the former de facto leader of the LGD. When Chen contracted oripathy along with Nine during a mission by an injury from an originium bomb, it was only because of her uncle that she was spared the same fate as Nine. After the Chernobog Lungmen incident, however, she was forced to face her uncle's hypocrisy, how her uncle protected her, but then sent out shadow guards to purge the slums of the infected, people that Chen tried to help. This is why, after the event, she turned in her resignation letter from the LGD and joined Rhodes Island. And now we get to Dossoles Holiday, where we get her alter, Chen the Holungday. Holungday, a pun of the word holiday with the word lung inserted into it. Literally because she was supposed to be vacationing in Siesta when she was requested to represent her uncle in Dossoles. So what exactly happened in Dossoles that gave Chen an alter? Was it really her water gun? Well, partially. You see, Chen was an idealist, someone who had a strong sense of justice and would do anything in the pursuit of it, but who also saw everything as black and white, good or evil. She had the belief that she could do anything in the pursuit of justice. The guard Chen used a sword, and that reflects her idealism pretty well. You're either on the wrong side of the sword or the safe side, and it just takes one decisive swing to decide life or death, right or wrong. Chen the Holungday was given a water gun, a weapon that had no ultimatum. Well, in story. In game, it very much had an ultimatum, but let me cope. Reduced to using a water gun, something that is far more complicated and less lethal than a sword, Chen was forced to face the complexity of morality. Now that's a difficult gray area to navigate. The question of what is moral is one that haunts our experiences, because what is ethical is never truly clear-cut. Ethics, morality, what is just, is defined by the time and place it's in. What was considered ethical years ago can be considered unethical and inhumane today. For example, and I will put up photos of cute puppies to make this easier for you guys, child labor, human experimentation without consent, forced sterilization, slavery, all these things that we nowadays take one look at and are immediately like, this is unethical. But there was a time when these were considered as normal, even ethical back then, because that was the society at the time. It was how they built themselves up, how they reacted to certain fanaticisms and beliefs. It's dictated by culture, dominant religion, type of government, etc. And we're not even taking this down to the individual human level, the socio-economic political experiences that dictated our actions as individuals. Heck, I won't be surprised if future generations look back at our time and scoff at whatever it is they deemed unethical by their standards. With all these factors, we realize that the question, what is right and what is just, is not as simple as we hope it would be. It's why the symbol of justice is a scale. You factor everything you can and weigh them against one another, and whichever side has more bearing is considered just. Is it always truly fair? No, the world is unfair, but we add all the checks and balances we can. And so, you take an idealist like Chen, who was arguably coddled and protected from the difficulties of morality by her uncle, and force her to confront this level of complex ethical questions. Yes, Pancho was essentially being a terrorist, but also he argues that Dossoles was built atop exploitation, wars, and lies. What is right? What is just? What could Chen even do? In Dossoles, Chen's idealism was forced to confront the fact that sometimes justice isn't so clear-cut. There will be gray areas of morality, and sometimes you can only do so much to save as many people as you can, but there are things that are out of your hands. You can't always be the one who delivers the decisive blow, who passes judgment on what is good and what is evil. And with that, I think something settled in Chen. The knowledge that sometimes there was just nothing you could do. There's nothing you can do. As much as we would like to believe that we can right all the wrongs in the world is just too complicated. The operators all comment that Chen, when she came back from Dossoles, was just easier to get along with. She's still strict, she trains hard even though people are shocked that she switched to a gun, but it's like she has accepted Rhodes Island and its mission. In learning that sometimes all we can do is our best, she grew to better understand Rhodes Island's mission. Back in the LGD, she was isolated and kept safe at the behest of her uncle. She was allowed to develop into her idealistic self in this environment. If she worked hard enough, she could right all the wrongs. The slums, Tallulah, reunion, a naive hope. Only when she took a vacation, when she was forced to face how bad things could get and be powerless to do anything about it, did she finally confront the true complexity of morality, and thus allowed her to grow into an even stronger person.
The events in Chernobog and my experiences in Dossoles both proved one thing. Whether fighting or saving, I must first understand my target. I need to broaden my horizons and open my eyes, Doctor.
I've been allowed to set aside the family business for a while, but it's clear to me that the future of Lungmen needs both a stable public sector and security apparatus, as well as a healthy business and financial system. In both respects, I'm ready to be of service to Lungmen.
Now we get to Swire. We had a pretty good background on Swire before she joined the LGD. Swire, or her real name, Beatrix Swire, is the daughter of the wealthy Swire family, which is this super high-profile family, which is like a huge conglomerate that has their fingers in many business ventures in Lungmen and Victoria. Although Swire could have just become a rich socialite, she surprisingly became a very serious member of the LGD. We learn that the reason for this was because the LGD saved her when she was kidnapped back when she was much younger, and this spurred her on to become part of the police force herself, like a life debt. Sounds simple enough until we get to her operator record day before the job, which shows the events leading up to Swire taking over as superintendent following Chen's resignation. We catch stories about her childhood, how ever since she was a child, she was told over and over again that she was the heir to the Swire companies, next in line from her grandfather, who was someone her parents always tiptoed around as if the slightest mistake could cause an eruption. It will be later on in life that she would realize that there was something beneath the surface with her family. Why was she declared the heir of the Swire family instead of her father? Her father was the eldest son, and in more traditional Asian business families, companies are passed down the male line with the eldest son as the heir. So it is already suspicious why her father is being passed on, and Beatrix is the next in line. It's implied that her father chose to live separately from the Swire conglomerate, and at the same time, her grandfather thinks that her father is not worthy of inheriting the Swire company. From a distance, it seems like run-of-the-mill rich family drama. But you have to see this in the perspective of a young child Beatrix. Your parents, the people who raised you and protect you, are cowering in fear from this grandfather figure you have never met before. And they expect you to take over for him. Understandably, she developed an almost irrational fear of her grandfather. One of my favorite quotes from Shakespeare's Macbeth is, "Present fears are less than horrible imaginings." Because it speaks to me on a spiritual level. The boogeyman sitting in the dark is scarier than the heap of clothes on the chair. The dark tendrils on your wall are scarier than the trees outside the window. Nightmare Freddy is 100 times more haunting than Freddy Fazbear. It's what makes Lovecraftian horror so poignant and effective. By turning horror towards the unknown, you turn the audience's imagination against them. The horror a person can imagine will always be scarier than reality. Real life has boundaries. Imagination is limitless. So Swire's fear of her grandfather must have been so compounded as she was growing up that she would have probably taken any out she could to avoid facing what it meant to be a Swire, to work in the same line or the same field, or dare I say, the same room as her grandfather. With this context, we see that she not only owes the LGD her life from saving her as a child, but that she continues to use the LGD to save her from her own childhood boogeyman. She works with the police. Very serious work. She can't sit in meetings and do business. Sorry, Grandpa. I have a life debt to the LGD. Surely you understand. Ha 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 ha. Which brings us to her carnival. In So Long Adele, Swire had to face her fears. Though the main narrative of the event was about baby girl Aya's sheep adventure, Swire was in the periphery going head-to-head against Bison in a bidding in order to redevelop Old Siesta's Fashion Street, with Swire wanting to expand her retail business and create a recreational area, while Bison wanted to make a logistical hub. Swire shows her business savviness by competing with Bison's international trade fair by making a water park to revitalize siesta tourism and save Fashion Street from bankruptcy, which ended up being the popular vote in the bidding. However, seeing opportunity for collaboration, she drops out of the bidding to invest in Bison's subsidiary, making them business partners. It may seem a bit out of character for her. After all, we know her as the rich brat who works in the LGD. We never really saw her in a business setting until now. But what if she always had that in her? Because even with, I assume, most of her life being dedicated to the LGD, notice her attitude. She's competitive, especially with Chen. She's very forward, headstrong, and brash. She wants to get to the top and works hard to do so. Characteristics that one may argue are the same characteristics a businessman would have. That go-getter entrepreneurial attitude that is always spoken about. Perhaps this was the attitude that her grandfather saw in her that was missing from her father. Perhaps that was why she was declared as his heir. At the end of the day, she has always been a Swire, and although entrepreneurship is not something passed down in blood, it is the environment she grew up with. That's how generational businesses are maintained, at least in Asia, because that's the world the children grow up with, and the only time someone were to shift off the path is if something drastic happens. Like I said before, the LGD is her safe space. They saved her once as a child when she was kidnapped, and they continue to save her into adulthood from her grandfather. Swire the Elegant Wit, while on vacation and thus away from the safe space of the LGD, confronted her fears. This wasn't just a simple retail store opening like she would do on the side, but she did a high-profile business venture that would affect a group of people. And as it turns out, the boogeyman of her life, her grandfather, was not that scary after all. In fact, he was quite proud of her after watching her video update on what happened in Siesta. Present fears are less than horrible imaginings.
I may have left my family's company, but I still deal in business every now and then. It's a way to build Lungmen, so there's no need to avoid the subject. And now that I've figured out what I need to do, I don't find my grandfather so scary anymore. Once you've made use of your fears, that's when you've truly conquered them, right?
This shield has a name. Hanya. I brought it from my hometown. Its father and mine were old friends. Back in the LGD, my superiors would always tease me about it. But together, we've proven that a shield makes a great weapon. And so do I.
Compared to the other two, Hoshiguma has a darker theme to her story. And I do mean that literally. Like, yay, Dossoles Holiday into it's no fair, I don't wanna have to wake up from this daydream into Ato. And it's crazy how dark the story went, like both plot-wise and literally. I went to this event expecting happy good times and I was thrust into Yakuza intrigue, the abuse of media and idol culture as deflection tactics, police corruption, and the like. But the most important thing is that we learned that the Hoshiguma we knew, pre-Ato Hoshiguma, was not always the way she was. Unlike Swire and Chen, whose pre-alters were themselves before confronting certain demons in their lives, Hoshiguma's pre-alter already had her demons. She was the result of a past she tried to erase. The ancient Romans had a practice called Damnatio Memoriae, Latin for condemnation of memory. This was a punishment only fit for the most damnable of traitors and tyrants. It is the concept of death not being enough of a punishment, and that even the memory of them must be removed, their names and faces stripped from every public record, every image of them destroyed, and they would even rewrite history books to remove them from the narrative. For the ancient Romans, true death is not just the loss of life, but the loss of an entire legacy. You are only truly dead once you are forgotten. And this is something we even practice to this day. Personal ways we practice modern Damnatio Memoriae, though obviously not to the same extremes as the Romans. When someone has done so much wrong to you that you not only remove them from your life, but it includes the practice of destroying every physical evidence of their existence and their tie to you. That's why the image of cutting people away from pictures, burning their items, or deleting all traces of them in their social media is in its way more profound than just announcing a separation. You know that joke about how a girl getting her haircut is a breakup indicator? That's not just a random phenomenon. Hairstyles can be associated with memories of a person, and chopping it off is literally like cutting that person from your life. It's not enough for them to be physically gone. Even their memory must be removed. And that includes the self that was with that person. Like, I have a friend who had a very toxic relationship years ago. And years after they broke up, I remember talking to him and joking about, remember when you were with this person? And he was like, I was blind. I didn't know any better. I was stupid back then. I've grown. I am a new person. Which brings us to Hoshiguma. In Ato, we learned that Hoshiguma was part of basically the Yakuza. Her father was a second-in-command, and after his death, Hoshiguma continued in his legacy and became a second-in-command herself. Things come into a head when she lost her mind while trying to protect the Diet member candidate and ended up on a killing spree on her own Yakuza siblings. Upon returning to her senses, the Diet member candidate was dead. Thinking she was the murderer, she took the blame and was banished from Mitsukue. The only thing she kept with her was the Hanya, or her massive shield, to help her keep her Oni madness in control. She went to Lungmen in order to make a new life for herself. Hoshiguma, when we met her in the LGD, isn't just that stable, reliable, badass figure who steps in between Swire and Chen when they're having their disagreements. She is the result of an attempt to Damnatio Memoriae her former self, to completely erase the existence of her past. And you have to imagine the effort she put in to redefine herself. When we meet her, she just seemed to be the most put together of the trio, a voice of reason and a reliable defender. She's just this really cool person. No way was she ex-Yakuza. However, as you might guess, unless you're able to literally control Z your life, achieving a complete Damnatio Memoriae is impossible. Especially with Hanya as a constant reminder of what horror she's capable of. And 20 years after leaving Higashi, Hoshiguma is forced back to confront her past in Ato. Technically, during her vacation time, so I mean, carnival? Fireworks? Yay! But during this vacation away from the LGD, we see Hoshiguma confront her past, everything she's been running away from ever since she was banished, but in confronting her past, she's able to overcome it and achieve closure. Not that the LGD held her back. I think spending 20 years away from Mitsukuge gave her time to steady herself and her resolve for her to mature and grow up away from the Yakuza way of life. By the time she came back to Mitsukuge, she has been changed. She was a different person, and it is this Hoshiguma who came into terms with everything that happened. She even comments in the event that she doesn't recognize Mitsukuge anymore. Perhaps that's why it's appropriate that the Hanya was kept but just reforged into something better. Hoshiguma the Breacher is a result of closure, of consolidating her past with her new identity in the LGD, not anymore trying to Damnatio Memoriae who she was, but who can now carry that part with her into her new future.
New weapons? Nope. Hanya just got reforged. And I shared a connection with this blade from early on. I prefer old school stuff for everything. Except my bike. Though I do keep my retired rides all nice and clean in the garage.
So what's the point in all of this? I don't know, this was supposed to be a joke. How did we end up here? It's crazy because I look back at the poll I made as a joke, and yes, haha, they needed a vacation. But it turns out this was a lot closer to home than expected, but not in the way I originally thought. After running through all three of these operators, it's interesting to see that their jobs in the LGD seem to serve as a sort of safe space for them. In fact, the LGD's faction symbol tells us exactly what it is. It's a shield. For Chen, the LGD was her shield from the existing prejudice against her oripathy, her shield from the gray areas that may have weakened her resolve to do anything in her pursuit of justice. For Swire, the LGD was her shield from the pull of her family. It was the shield that kept her safe from confronting her fears. For Hoshiguma, the LGD was her shield from her past. It gave her a clean identity that kept her isolated from her dark history. And so, when we talk about carnivals and vacations, for these three, it was not only a leave from work, but it is taking a step away from that shield. By taking a vacation from their jobs at the LGD, these three are then forced to face that which they were being shielded from. For Chen, she was forced to confront the complicated gray areas of life, that not everything was clear-cut black and white, that there is no pure evil nor pure good, and she will have to discern her path accordingly, and not sacrifice all for her pursuit of her perceived justice. For Swire, she overcame her fear by becoming the very person she was avoiding, a businesswoman, and in the process, she learned why she was chosen as the heir of the Swire name and got over her fear of her grandfather. For Hoshiguma, she not only confronted and accepted her history, but also used it to reforge her future, literally reforging her shield and officially excommunicating herself from her past. In facing that which she was running away from, she was finally able to free herself from it. When you look at it on the surface, it looks ironic. Like, we're supposed to be on a happy carnival vacation. Haha, psych! We're confronting our demons today, boys! But I think this is another interpretation of a vacation. The purpose of a vacation is to relax, get the load off your shoulders, recuperate, take some time so that when you come back, you have energy again. And that's what they did. Granted, they weren't exactly relaxing vacations, but it did settle them, lifted weights that haunted them, that they used the LGD to hide away from. And at the end of the day, they don't quit just because they have their altars. They still have their jobs. It's literally a vacation. Well, except for Chen, but apparently she still shows up in the LGD, so I mean... We all have our demons, and facing these demons can be scary. We would like to avoid it as long as we can. We hide behind excuses, behind jobs, behind hobbies, distractions that would let us shove these demons under the rug again and again. But we'll have to face those demons at some point, and we might not be able to control when that happens. It's best to be prepared for when you do. And maybe those demons are not as scary as we think. Thank you so much for making it to the end of this video. This ended up being so much more serious than I initially foresaw. I legitimately thought I was gonna cope and seethe and just make jokes throughout the whole video, but I think I managed to bring everything to a satisfying conclusion. Let me know who is your favorite altar pair amongst the Lungmen trio, and let me know if you want me to do a deeper dive into each in their own lore and ludonarrative analysis. Just give me a bit of time, because I still need to finish part 4 of the Abyssal Hunters one, ha ha ha. Anyway, that's it for now. I'll see you guys next time. Bye!